Thanks for swimming with us at the card pool. I'm your host, Stu.
And I'm Kyle.
And today we're looking at Prophecy. We're going to be finishing up our Hidden Gem segment. This is going to be part 2 of it, which is going to be cards 5 through 1 that we were allowed to pick from. And these are the cards that weren't money in the set.
And these are the ones that maybe we didn't struggle over as much as the last 5. I don't know. I still kind of struggle.
We found some that were interesting and a couple that I actually stand by saying these should be a little bit more valuable than they are. But
perhaps so.
Without wasting any more of your precious time, at number 5 here I have a card that is called Sunken Field. Now this is a 2-drop land aura. You don't see many of those. And it reads, Enchanted land has tap, counter target spell, unless its controller pays 1 generic mana. So what is so fab about a card like this? Well, this is a reusable counterspell right here, where you can go ahead and make it so, hey, just for leaving a land open, go ahead, tap that land, and now they have to worry about something. So if you potentially have a card in your hand that you do not want to cast, but you left mana open to cast it, then pretty much you can leave this out as a threat. A televised threat is always a good one, especially when it comes to counter spells. It makes every player have to play around them, like we were saying with a couple of the cards previously.
Exactly, just like Spiketail Hatchling that I pointed out in the last video. It won't always do a whole lot, but sometimes that little extra tax and that warning can make people hold back, if nothing else. The only thing I'll say about this as a negative, though, is making a land have to tap to do this ability. That means you can't use that land for mana, so it's a little bit...
Well, you choose, honestly.
Maybe.
Some lands you kind of want to hold back because they have something where it's like you tap it, it costs you life or something like that, or here and there. Or if it's something where it's like it's just a basic land and you don't really care about them too much, like put a little bit of a target on that land, quote-unquote. It's not the worst thing in the world. And also, this doesn't have to be a land you control. If there's some players just sitting there and no cards in hand, make them the threat with this thing on there. I mean, I wouldn't typically want to give a player that much power, but either way, you know, it's... Again, just for 2 mana and recurable this spell for 2 mana. We've seen spells like this which do cost 2 mana for one-shot effects. So a reusable variant of it without any bells or whistles, just needing a land, not bad. So, moving on to your number 5, Kyle.
Okay, yeah, my number 5 is going to be a white card this time. It's called Excise. This is an instant, and it costs X and a white. Remove target attacking creature from the game, or exile target creature if we want to use the modern terms.
That is, updated.
Yeah, exile target attacking creature, unless its controller pays X. So, I mean, we've seen, Swords to Plowshares and Path to Exile. Does this really stand up to that? No, not on a lot of levels. However, this is nice because it can scale with the game like so many other good cards can, and your opponent at some point won't possibly be able to pay for this. So if this is a good budget option at least, yeah, probably it is. It's not too bad.
If you want to take the budget option of swords, sure.
Yeah. I mean, it has to be an attacking creature for one thing.
But I was going to say, it's limited to the attacking thing. We've talked about other cards before where it's like, it's just a creature. I remember talking about a card, legit, a legendary bird creature. I can't remember the name of it for the life of me, the little Dickens. But legit, it would be like just flat out sacrifice this card, exile target attacking creature. So we've seen this effect throughout white, sprinkled on a variety of things. I don't know if this is the best version of it that we've seen recently.
Oh, it's definitely not, but it's one of the better cards in this set.
It probably might be one of the ones. I think honestly your 6 is better than this 5, but... If there's not much more you have to talk about this one, Kyle. I really don't.
Not really. Let's move on.
All right, my number 4, we're going to be looking at a card here called Greel Mindraker. Greel?
Yeah, sure.
It costs 5 mana for a legendary spell shaper creature that has a 3/3 body, and it costs 3 generic and double black. And for X and a black, you go ahead and you tap this card. You discard 2 cards from your hand, and target player discards X cards at random from his or her hand. So the reason I like this kind of card is because typically when we see discarding cards, it's either tacked onto dealing combat damage or it's kind of a 1-for-1. I play this card, you discard a card. So it takes us both down to a thing. Or it's limited to like how many cards I'm discarding if it's a mass amount. This only cares about 2 cards and the rest of it is mana. So if you have enough mana, provided, you had 5 mana to cast this guy, let's say the next turn in a slower game, you have 6 lands out, go ahead, tap this, you can make them go ahead and lose 5 cards, which is a severe hit on their hand. And you can make it so players are just top decking for the rest of the game.
Well, I usually don't love pure discard cards with nothing else going on. like the what do you call it? Like Mind Rot, you know, where target player discards 2 cards. Those cards have never really been that great, in my opinion. When you put it on a creature and make it reusable, it gets a little bit better. However, what I do like about this card here is the random aspect of the discard.
Yes.
So many times, it's just target player discards however many cards. And it's like, oh, sure, they can pitch their worst cards and keep their best ones. This makes it random. That makes the probability of you actually hurting somebody by making them discard much, much higher. So, is it worth a lot of mana and losing 2 of your own cards to do? I don't know.
Well,
maybe.
Black can produce a lot of mana at very much its own whim, and it can draw a good amount of cards on its own, too. So it's not just blue that would be having that advantage for that. So I think that this really could be viable. Now, I don't know as a commander, per se.
Yeah,
maybe
no,
a card in the
not.
99. Like, there are tons of decks that care about discarding, like Nath of the Gilt Leaf. That's, like, one that likes the more you discard, the better it gets. Yeah. And this is a creature version where it's, like, it's not just an enchantment. It's not a one-of sorcery or instant. It gives you a little bit of versatility to how you want to be able to approach this effect. And more options, the better.
Yeah, so interesting card. Interesting. I don't know that it's better than the one that I liked.
I have another one coming, so don't you fret. But I do
right.
think it is better than the one that you were saying.
All right, well, we'll see. All right, my number 4 here, if we're going to move on, is another white card. This one is called Blessed Wind. Now, this is a hefty 9-drop sorcery.
Yeah, that's
7
not your style
and
right
double
there.
white. But its ability is, it's very short but very powerful. Target player's life total becomes 20. Now, this is no big deal and probably actively bad if you're not playing something like Commander where you have more than 20 life to start with.
Yeah, I'll reset.
It's obviously not as powerful as something like Sorin Markov, Magister Sphinx, even Torgar, Famine Incarnate from Dominaria that, you know, halves people's life totals.
How do
it's
you
not
say
that
all those
powerful.
words that easily? That's incredible.
Just a skill. But that said, I just thought it was so cool to see a color outside of black be able to reset people's life totals. There's, you know, Reverse the Sands in white that does this sort of thing among redistributing life totals among a bunch of players.
Yeah.
This is somewhat similar for a similar mana cost, but the potential in white to have somebody else's life total, that's an offensive use of life that white rarely sees.
Well, okay, so we do have cards like Resolute Archangel, which can restore your life. It's not necessarily a player, which is kind of the point you're saying. Being able to use this on somebody and take them down a level is good. Like, there are many times where you play Magic, somebody has a stupid amount.
Life, yeah.
Yeah, I have an arbitrary, infinite life or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, it doesn't matter what I do. I have to either get commander damage, an infinite combo, infect on them, or something else like that. Otherwise, I'm dead in the water. This takes them down a peg, and that's a good thing. Like, Exsanguinate, sometimes if you're able to somehow live through that and they just get a ridiculous amount of life, okay, well, now you're back down to 20. I can handle this. Right. So it's not bad in that regard, but I think there might have been, like, a couple cards. Again, if you're doing this strictly to save your life, there's better cards to save your life. But
agreed.
To impede,
it's not worth it. It's not worth it if you're just doing that. But to hurt other people, maybe it is. I don't know. Because technically, when another player's life total becomes something else, that is counted as gaining or losing life. So if somebody has 40 and you use this to set them to 20, that could trigger abilities that, you know, loss of life. So you could then make them lose more life, and then they could just die with something like Wound Reflection. Yeah. So,
well, also, and there are other things out there where it's like if somebody's pillow forting and they're using life as a resource, you can take that out of the equation. Like, many decks actually like to hide behind Glacial Chasm. Let's say they're starting at 40 and you go ahead and do this. Well, again, you need to have the mana for this. White doesn't really have the best way of getting that mana bump really easily.
Yeah, it has to be paired with something else.
Yeah, so, like, but again, that's not impossible to go ahead and get that mana real fast with green. There are artifacts to go ahead and get that cap up. Like, you can use, like, a Thran Dynamo or something like that. But, yeah, different. Definitely hard to take note of for certain.
Yeah, and I think you got another one, too, at your number 3 still.
I do. No, but the last thing I want to say about your card, I just wish that had instant speed. For that much mana, it needs instant speed.
Yeah, me too. Prophecy was just not great, man. It just wasn't that great.
Well, at my number 3, yes, I do have another white card, and it is severely less mana. It's called Reveal?
Revelry.
Revelry?
Revelry. You never seen that word?
No, dude. I before
right.
E. I before E, except this is the only few examples out of that rhyme. All right, well, let's bring that card back up. Our Word Squad. It costs 4 mana, 2 generic, and double white. For a creature rebel, this is probably oracled to human at this point. It has a 3/3 body, and whenever you're attacked, if this creature is untapped, you may untap all creatures you control. A lot of T's in there, and I'm definitely struggling with reading as normal. So this is really good because it gives you guys pseudo vigilance, where you can go ahead and you can use them for tapping. So that works with Convoke, it works with vehicles, it works with tap triggers, it works with stuff like Mesmeric Orb if you're trying to fill up your grave. But again, if you are attacked and this guy is untapped, which it probably will be, you get that advantage. So it makes it so people don't want to attack you, which is kind of a big thing in Magic.
Yes, this is like a Seedborn Muse almost in white.
In white. Now, it is
That's
conditional,
so weird.
and you can make it so players have to attack you. Those cards do exist. They're typically in red or even blue.
Mostly red these days.
Mostly
but blue
red.
has them too. Yeah.
So if you go ahead and you had the right kind of color pair with this, you get a very bizarre effect. Most players are going to read, put it down, reread it again, pull up the Oracle text on their phone, and then be like, yeah, it really does do that.
Yeah, it's very interesting card. I mean, it's pretty cool to actually think about, and sure, it does depend on people attacking you for that to work, but still. Not something that white generally has, ever.
But you also, so that's the thing, like typically if you go ahead and you swing out, you're vulnerable to retaliation attacks. That's not the case. And even still, it doesn't have to say that this card has to block it. So it could be a little 1/1 flyer coming at you, a little Thopter or something like that, and you still get this kind of value. And again, I'll bring up the political plays. Somehow, let's say you can take care of a situation as a problem and another player can't, and they realize that. So if it's turn order, like, let's say Kyle's got this guy out, I'm going to play something, I have nothing I can do, the next player is obviously going to win. I'll tack into Kyle, let him get the effect, and then he can take care of the other player right there.
Right.
So you can go ahead and, like, tag team to get some stuff done, which is, again, always cards that are really good to have.
Yeah.
So
interesting.
And again, human tribal's a thing. Can't go wrong with some of that.
Yeah, agreed. So I guess we'll go on to my number 3 now here, which is going to be, going back to my favorite color, of course, a blue card. And this is
not
Rethink.
Green?
No, not green. That would be you. This is an instant. It costs 3 mana. Counter target spell unless its controller pays X, where X is that spell's converted mana cost.
I like that.
Yeah, so I'll venture to say that in a Commander game, this will more often than not just be counter target spell for 3 mana.
Yeah.
Usually, in a game like Commander, people like to play the big flashy spells, so doubling the cost of those means they probably will not be able to play them the vast majority of the time.
Well, this will miss a couple things, because it's just the CMC of that spell. So,
Right.
like, if the commander has gone ahead and died a couple times, that commander tax isn't tacked onto it at that point.
Right, but still, playing a Commander that costs 5 mana, in order for it to go off with this card around, you would have to have at least 10 mana on hand. That's not always going to be the case.
Yeah, and even if it has died twice, like let's say they're going ahead and paying 9, at that point, the likelihood of them having 5 extra on top of that, like pretty much what you're saying. The only card I think that wouldn't get around, it would be a Cyclonic Rift, because the mana cost is 2, so they would have to pay an additional 2 because the overload cost isn't
exactly.
superseding that.
That is very true. However, I do think, like I said, that this isn't like it's no counter spell by any stretch, but it's a nice solid budget option for people that like. And it's actually, I'm saying that like non-ironically, this is a really good.
No, it is
budget
good.
Option.
It is a solid card. Again,
yeah.
Cancel to this card. I mean, usually you want cards to be like flat out. This is countered. This is cancels. So for them to go ahead and rethink, honestly, you're going to play this. They're going to do a double take and be like, yeah, I guess it stops. Like,
and hey, even if they play some like 3 mana removal spell and they've got, let's say, 7 mana left to burn. The odds are that you playing this and them having to pay 3 more is going to set back their entire game plan by 1 turn.
Yeah.
So that alone might make it worth considering.
And let's say you're already using some of like the lower costed mana lower costed counter spells, and then like like, so you got your mana drains, your counter spells, all this other stuff, your cancels, and then you start moving outside of the 3 zone. Now you're in the 4. You got like cryptic command, stuff like that. Sometimes you don't want to shell out money for this. If you want to still keep the CMC down on the deck, this could be a filler option, which is really great. And again, most people won't see this coming. They won't think to leave half their mana open. Like, no one plans to leave half their mana open. Maybe 2 mana for a counter spell, sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, I like it. Not a bad choice, actually, and a good surprise, a good refreshing card for this set.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Now, at my number 2, I also have a blue card. Not because Kyle chose one, but because I thought this is actually a really good card. Now, this is a creature card called Gulf Squid. And it's actually a card I can read, which is refreshing as well. It costs 4 mana, 3 generic, and an island for a beast with a 2/2 body. And it reads, whenever this enters play, go ahead and tap all lands target player controls. So this is really good for blink decks. Now, the main reason being is you can go ahead and obligate their mana to make it all go away. So they'll have their untap, upkeep, and draw step, right? On the upkeep, let's say you have something like an Eldrazi Displacer or something like that, something that will make it leave and come right back in. Use that. They have their upkeep to go ahead and cast anything they can. After that, their lands are tapped. So it's a good way to kind of hose players out of the game, and you can go ahead and use this over and over and over again.
I've seen, I don't know, like, I've seen a bunch of these, land tapping cards. Honestly, I don't really understand what the hype is all about. Like, sure, can they stop people from responding sometimes at a critical moment? Okay, but only if you time it just right. Otherwise, they're just going to float a bunch of mana and do whatever they were going to do anyway.
But it will, depending on what phase you're using this in, that mana will go away. And there's certain decks that exist, like Omnath, which can go ahead and keep that mana after the phase is gone, and like Krufix, the god, not the prophet, which can go ahead and keep that mana going. So outside of that, how do you preserve the mana? You have to use it on the upkeep. So you can't cast sorceries, you can't cast creatures unless they have flash or some way to enable a flash. You can only cast your instance, and at that point, depending on what you got going on, you're going to be out of the game. And it's for that turn only.
Right, but the pool of cards that can make that possible is actually smaller than you might think it is. A lot of cards don't work unless it's like during the actual main or combat step, which is pretty much past the window in which this is good. And also, or it's something that exiles until the end of the turn. Again, this isn't very good.
I'm just going to say Deadeye Navigator.
Well, obviously. I mean, that's good with pretty much anything.
But I didn't even choose Deadeye. I chose Eldrazi Displacer.
Yeah, but like I said, they're actually outside of those few. The pool of cards that that does what you would like this to do is actually not that big.
I get what you're saying. Like pretty much because most of them are at the end of the turn. When they would return back into play.
Or it happens like Brago, for example, who triggers blinks everything when he does combat damage. That's past the point where this card is going to be useful.
No, I get that. I'm saying pretty much that there are other cards with it. Like it would slot into certain commander decks that like to blink. Rune is a commander that likes to blink. Brago is a commander that likes to blink, and there's a couple other out there as well, and other cards to combo this with. You know what? And I'll do a poll. Is this a card that you would side with my ideologies or Kyle's? And we'll bring it up real fast. It's a Gulf Squid. If you're not sure, take a look at it right now. Wiggy wham, bam, and tell me that I'm right and Kyle is wrong.
Or that I'm right and Stu is wrong.
Yeah,
which I think is far more likely.
I think it is further from the truth. But moving on to your number 2, Mr. Wrong Man. What do you got?
All right. Well, my number 2 here is Spitting Spider. Going into your favorite color now.
It's like you spitting all these wrong things out,
Or all these right things. Nope. Like, for example, this one. It's a 3/5, and it has flying, and of course it costs 5 mana, 3 generic, and 2 green. Not only does it have reach, but you can also, at any time, sacrifice a land and have Spitting Spider do 1 damage to each creature with flying. So, just analyzing this without taking any other cards into account, is this all that great? Probably not. Sacrificing lands, even if you are getting to do damage to all creatures with flying, can be very good for green.
I think this is good.
Well, I'm getting there, yeah, but this is not super great in that respect. Like, losing a land is kind of a big deal. However, I personally take note of this card because I love Titania decks, and Titania is very much a thing.
Or Gitrog or anything
Or
else.
get Rog Monster too at this point. So yeah, there are more and more cards these days, and even Corvold, I guess, that like
Omnath.
sacrificing lands to have them go to the graveyard to get other abilities. This is just one more free sacrifice all your lands outlet.
See, I wasn't even thinking as like a sack outlet for lands. I was thinking more or less the way it's like, all right, well, what would not hurt as much? It's like, well, if you're using a landfall deck, if you're going ahead and you're flooding out lands like crazy, the sacrificing the land won't hurt as bad.
That's also true. I'm mostly thinking of this in terms of like Sylvan Safekeeper is obviously like way better than this, but this is still a free sack outlet for lands to like whatever, you get a bunch of tokens, draw a bunch of cards, whatever it is exactly that your deck does. So I think it's worth considering just for that alone.
And actually, there is a way to note that green can go ahead and force creatures to have flying. There is the Praetor flagship where you can go ahead. I think you tap 1 mana, a creature has flying.
2, but yes.
Yeah, like creature, you can go ahead and make it so a creature can fly, and it's also meant to make it so that you can kill pretty much all creatures with flying. So that's an enabler with an enabler, and green has a whole bunch of ways of hating on the birds, more or less. Like anything flying is going down. That's the natural order.
Yeah, so I think this is good. I mean, I guess there are different levels, but yeah, just as a free sacrifice for all of your lands,
and this
that
is
can
also
be very
like
useful.
one of the closest options like green can get to a board wipe, quote unquote, because they're very limited on like how to get rid of creatures. It has to be we're either fighting it or it's just regular combat damage.
Yeah.
There's no real way of being like, hey, we're gonna play Wrath of God. That doesn't happen. There's like the one. It's like Azuri's something like that.
Predation.
So yeah, you have like Azuri's Predation. There's like the one Hydra where it goes ahead and makes monstrous, and then it goes ahead and deals...
the Great Aurora is another one, but the green board wipes are very few and far between.
Yeah,
so.
which is more or less the point I'm trying to get at. You have to go through a lot of little combos. This one on its own can stand up. And now again, not the whole board, just flyers. But again, if somebody goes ahead and puts Wander in their grave, this is great against that.
Yeah. That's true. All right.
So moving on to my number 1, Kyle. And now this is the legendary that I'm saying is the legendary from this set.
Okay, I'm interested.
And to prove you that you are wrong, it is called Jorielle, Empress of Beasts. And we actually are getting a new Jorielle in M21, which is actually really interesting. So this is the old school one. This is a 5-drop. It is 3 generic and double green for a legendary creature spell shaper, which is also a human with a 3/3 body. Now for 3 mana, you can go ahead and tap this for 2 generic and a forest. You discard 2 cards like we've been seeing all the legendary creatures do. And until the end of turn, all lands target player control become 3/3 creatures, and they are also still lands. So what is something that you can do with this? Well, first things pop to mind is I'm taking a player's land base out of the game.
Right. Obviously, turning lands into creatures and then using a board wipe is a pretty solid strategy that has been used before.
Yeah, it is dangerous. And again, forcing them to do it, like if you play a Dryad Arbor and it dies to a board wipe, that's your own fault for using it. Now, if you go ahead and you animate a land because it has some sort of thing like, I don't know, pretty much every color has a way to animate a land by itself, and you attack with it and it dies, again, that's your fault for animating it. But taking your decision out of it and leaving you that vulnerable, oh yeah, that is mean, it is cruel, and also having that much power is incredible, especially being in green.
Well, especially even threatening to do it, just saying, hey, don't blow up the board or I'll make your lands go too. That's a pretty powerful political tool in Commander.
Well, it makes Cyclonic Rift, like, way stronger. It makes again, because it's not even like playing like a Wrath of God. It's anything that bounces stuff or like goes with that. But again, you can also use this as a safety measure. Let's say you don't want very many creatures and they have a Grave Pact out. You can force yourself to lose the lands in order to do this. It will hurt, but it won't hurt the way you want it to, which is actually the kind of the point with this. And you can also use this as like a huge kind of overrun kind of status. If you want to go ahead, swing in with Triumph of the Hordes or anything else to go ahead and make big stupid damage, that's a way to win with this.
Yeah, the only drawback to these kind of cards is I always get very nervous about turning my lands into creatures because they're much easier to destroy that way.
Yes.
And I don't even know that I want to attack with them most of the time for fear that they're going to get blocked. So, I don't know. I mean, I see your point. This can potentially be pretty powerful, but I don't know. Still, I'm like kind of on the fence about it, honestly.
I see, but the thing is like out of the other ones we've seen, This one can be a commander. And that right there, the fact that it can be a commander versus being in the 99, brings it a step up, which proves that you're wrong. So
I hardly think that I'm wrong. I just think it's up to people's personal taste whether or not they're into this kind of thing.
is it in everyone's personal taste except for Kyle's that this is a commander and this is a better one? No, that's commander. Is that this is a better version of the legendaries that we've seen. Each one of them in the colors has a legendary that is this flavor. Would you argue this is the strongest? That was very long-winded, but you get my point.
Well,
now,
yeah, let's move on to, I got a number one that I know you're going to love still.
All right, make it rain.
All right, so my number one is, and this is a very well-known card actually, totally forgot it was in this set, Spore Frog.
Yeah,
now, this
great
is
card.
An unobtrusive little thing, a 1/1 for 1 mana, and it's a frog, and it looks adorable.
It looks like mold to me, man.
Well, it is kind of, I guess. But if you sacrifice Spore Frog, you prevent all combat damage that will be dealt this turn. So it is the Frog Fog, as I think you were probably going to say.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the Frog Frog.
But yeah,
Frog.
Obviously, yeah, as we've seen with things like Spike Weaver and then Kami of False Hope, fogs are good on occasion, but fogs on a creature's body are even more useful.
Yes.
Because this is Exhibit A for all kinds of broken shenanigans, because Carador decks love Spore Frog and other creatures like it. This is like one of the #1 problems, because you can keep recurring this thing and basically make yourself immune from damage. It's great. It really, really is. When they're creatures, they're so easy to get back as opposed to the instant or sorcery version.
Well, especially being in green. Also, like, I love bringing Sun Titan into this. Go ahead, bring up Sun Titan.
Yeah.
Go ahead, do this. You're fine. Keep recurring this as much as you want. Also, it's a 1-drop with Knight Captain of Eos. Or is it Ranger Captain Eos? There's a whole bunch
both of them. Yeah, well,
actually, yeah, both of them. Actually, technically, they can tutor this out. This is a 1-drop, which works very well with that card if you are in white. So, yeah, classic frog. And it's a great card. It's a televised kind of thing, which kind of makes it so it's like they're going to force you to use it when you don't want to. But again, you still are getting a little bit of leverage on this. So it's a great card, great budget option. And again, if we see Frog Tribal being a thing, 100% a staple.
Oh yeah, and I love the fact that it sacrifices itself for free at any time, which basically means it's immune from any kind of removal.
Yeah,
so
same thing we see with like Divining Top almost.
Yeah, what a powerful card, really. For 1 mana, sign me up.
I agree, yeah. So that is our final card from Prophecy. Were these cards as bad as you remembered? Because actually going through them again, it was a bit of a yes and a bit of a no.
Yeah.
So, but let us know if there's any one of these cards that you think actually should be higher up on our list.
Indeed, and also you can find us on social media as well if you want some more perspective. You can find us on Reddit. We've got our own subreddit, and we post on others frequently as well. We have Tapped Out page where you can see all of our cool deck lists, and we are on Facebook and Twitter with all of our latest content, all at the handle The Card Pool, as you see below.
And if you're not sure if we're on a social media, just type in The Card Pool. You might find us there. You never know. We're on a variety of things. But also, we are affiliated with TCG Player, so if any of these cards did tickle your fancy as being budget options and you want to pick them up, just make sure before you hit the checkout button, you click on our link down in the description below, and that will let them know that you like us and that they should take note to help us, which is actually a big deal for our channel. So if you do that, thank you very much.
Indeed. So I guess that about wraps it up for this video. So until next time, I'm Kyle.
He is Kyle, and I am Stu.
And
we will see you next time at the Card Pool.
Yes, nailed it.
That frog, I did forget it was in this set, too.
I know, right?
So good.
Stuff.